What's up everybody? So why am I showing you this picture? Because this right here is a sperm whale, and today we're going to be talking about spermatogenesis, how to make sperm cells, specifically mature sperm cells. So let's just get into it. Who do we have right here? Who is this guy? You should know this guy. He's Eminem, right? And this here is Miley Cyrus. Now tell me, what's the difference between Eminem and Miley Cyrus? Eminem has balls, right? And Miley Cyrus does not. So what's so special about balls, otherwise known as testes? Testes is the place, the only place where sperm can be made. Sperm, right? Now, what about Miley Cyrus? What can she do? She has ovaries, which Eminem does not have. So what can that do? Ovaries can make eggs. We call this process of making eggs oogenesis. And we call this process of making sperm spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis, sperm meaning sperm, and genesis meaning to make or to synthesize. So that's obviously the topic of today's video. We're going to be focusing on how mature sperm is made. Now, what's so special about sperm cells and egg cells? Like, why are we talking about them? Why do we care about them? Guys, because you know we're made up of billions of cells, right? Billions and billions of cells. But most of our cells, 99.999% of our cells, are made up of, contain 46 chromosomes. 46 chromosomes, right? Half of them, so 23 from your mom and 23 from your dad. But these cells only have 23 chromosomes. So a sperm doesn't have 46 like all our other cells. It has only 23 chromosomes. Same with the egg. So why is this important? Because imagine to make a baby, right? The dad's sperm will meet the mom's egg in a process called fertilization, where the sperm will pass on its DNA, right, to the egg. So the sperm has 23 chromosomes. So if it passes on these 23 chromosomes to the egg, how many chromosomes does the egg have now? 46, right? That's the same amount as a normal cell. Now this egg will develop and develop in pregnancy to eventually form a baby, right? It will duplicate and duplicate by mitosis. So, and that will give us a normal baby with 46 chromosomes in each cell. Imagine these sex cells had 46 chromosomes. When they combine, that would give you 92. That would be the completely wrong number, right? The completely wrong number. And that would give you a completely different organism. So it's very important that we can make these sex cells or these sperm and egg cells. So let's go and talk about how exactly we make this kind of cell, spermatogenesis. So to get clear, we're going to look at the testes in great detail. We're going to zoom into here because that's where everything is happening. So right here, we're zooming into a testes. Now remember, this is not what it really looks like, because in reality, the males have a scrotum. A scrotum is a little bag that's going to hold these testes. So in reality, this picture does not have a scrotum. So bear that in mind. There should be a scrotum, but if we remove the scrotum, you'll see the testes. Now this is what the testes look like. Now, okay, great. What can we see here? Let's label some stuff. This right here, what do we call that? We call that the name we know, testes. That's our testes. Now, that's where the sperm will be made. What about this? What is this right here? This right here is called an epididymis. Epididymis. It's a thing right here on the testes. And we'll see exactly what this is shortly. So don't worry. Just know that this name exists. Don't worry about what's going on just yet. We're going to talk about it soon. Now, from this epididymis comes this other pipe. We call this our sperm duct or our vas deferens, and we'll look at that in another video in more detail because it doesn't matter for spermatogenesis. But basically, the sperm duct comes off of here and it goes, and it's eventually going to lead to your pee hole, and that's where your sperm will come out of, right? So don't worry too much about that for now. So, okay, now you might ask me, okay, I get it, but where exactly is sperm made? Like where? I can't see anything that's going to make it. You're right, because we got to look at the inside of these testes. So what we're going to do now is we're going to slice open these testes and we're going to look at what's going on inside. So imagine, look at this. We're slicing it open, right? We're removing it, cutting it in half, and we can see all this, okay? This right here is the inside of our testes. Wow, it looks crazy, right? But trust me, don't worry. You're probably thinking, oh, frick, I'm going to change video. This is way too complicated. But don't worry, it's not bad, actually. It's quite simple, in fact. Think about it just from a big, broad perspective. What do you see here? What's the one key thing you see? You probably see a lot of these little pipes, right? A lot of tubes and a lot of tubes, right? That's the only thing you need to care about. Okay, what do we call these tubes? We call these tubes seminiferous tubules. Seminiferous tubules. Now, sperm is going to be made inside these tubules. Specifically, remember this here, this aspect here is the testes. This right here is the epididymis, right? So the sperm will be made inside the testes seminiferous tubules, not up here, okay? So after the sperm is made here in these seminiferous tubules, all these little pipes, then it will be sent into here, where it will stay for a while, and we'll talk about that later. So don't worry about this too much. Okay, great, that makes more sense. So let's now zoom in a little bit more. Let me move this up so it can make some space. Okay, so we're going to take now a look at one of these tubes, one of these seminiferous tubules. Okay, so here we go. We take one, we pull it out, and we're going to look at it up close. Okay, so we see here, very basically, a little pipe. It's basically like a pipe. There's a lumen on the inside, basically a space, and then we can see these cells, right, making this pipe. Don't worry about much now, because we're going to go into detail more now. But what do you see here? You see a little sperm. That's where the sperm is made, right? The sperm. That's what we care about. The sperm. Okay, now, before we move on, I want you to understand what sperm really means. So when you think about sperm, I want you to think of it like this. When I ask you, think about a human, what do you think of? You can think of so many things, right? Not just one thing. You can think of a baby, a fetus, an adult, an adolescent, a toddler, an elderly. You can think of many kinds of humans, different ages and all that, right? So it's the same with a sperm. A sperm, the name sperm, is a very general term. It's not specific. Like there are baby sperm, there are adult sperm, there's maturing sperm, there's many different kinds of sperm. And each of those different kinds of sperm will give a specific name. So I want you to know that sperm is a very broad term. It's not a specific name. It's a very general term. It's like saying human, right? It's not specific. Okay, so you'll see exactly what I mean. We're going to learn many more specific names of different kinds of sperm in this video. By the way, guess how many sperm is made every single day in your testes? 100 million. You make 100 million of these little guys every single day. If you're a male, of course. Okay, now we're going to zoom in even more. We're going to look at this pipe specifically because this is where it's made, right? The sperm. So we're going to take a look at this and explain how sperm is made. We're going to explain exactly how spermatogenesis happens. So here we have the little seminiferous tubule. And you can see again, we have these little cells here surrounding it. And we have this thin layer here as well. This thin layer is other kind of cells. But it's so small that I didn't even bother drawing the little cells. So know that the most outer layer of this tube is a bunch of small cells. We call them germinal cells, but you don't need to worry about that. And then slightly inner to those germinal cells, we have this big layer. These are massive cells, right? And we'll give them names just now. Now notice that in between these little big cells, right? Let's give a name to them now. We call these big cells Sertoli cells. Sertoli cells. Now, in between these big cells, we can see these little spaces, right? They have some small space. They have some privacy, some small space. They want their personal space. Now, the thing is, sperm is made inside these spaces. So it's very difficult for me to explain in this tiny, teeny space. So what I did was I exaggerated one of the spaces. So the space in between this and this cell, I made really, really big on purpose. So it's not really this big. Normally it's like this, it's very tiny. But I made it very big because I'm going to try and explain by making some pictures here so you can understand how sperm is made. So just be clear that only for the sake of this video, I made this space very big. So it's easier to understand what's going on here. Now, what else do you notice? What are these things? What are these things? These are capillaries, little tiny vessels, right? Our blood. This is carrying our blood, our nutrients, and it's carrying everything around our body to wherever they need to be, right? It's like the road of our body. Now, why is this here? Think about it. When you cut your arm, do you bleed? Yes. When you cut your little teeny tiny toe, do you bleed? Yes. When you cut your face, do you bleed? Yes. Wherever you cut, you will bleed, right? So it's the same thing here. If you cut your testes, you will bleed. So just know that although it looks like in this picture, there's only these seminiferous tubules, there's also many little vessels. There's always vessels everywhere. So that's why I'm putting them here. Just bear in mind there's vessels everywhere. Now, what else do we got? We have another kind of cell. We call this cell, it's kind of right in between all the tubules. So notice if we come back to this picture, we have a lot of tubules. In between the tubules, we have all these little capillaries, these small vessels, and also these Leydig cells. We call them Leydig cells. Okay, Leydig cells. Very simple, Leydig cells. And we'll see exactly what all of these do. Okay, now let's get started. So to make a cell, how does it work? To make a cell, you always have to start with what? You have to start with a stem cell. A stem cell, remember, is a kind of cell that can differentiate and have potential to become any kind of cell, right? So this cell here has the potential to become any cell. In this case, this stem cell has the potential to become a sperm cell, right? So what do we call this stem cell that is going to become a sperm cell? We call it a spermatogonium. A spermatogonium, okay? So remember how I said sperm is a very general name, right? It's a very broad name. That's because the most baby form of a sperm is called a spermatogonium, the very first stage. Now, these sperms, these little spermatogonium can duplicate, right? They can form more and more and more. What do we call that process of like duplicating? So this cell duplicating to become two identical cells. We call that mitosis, right? And you'll learn that in another topic if you haven't learned it yet, but by now I think you would have. So now, if you don't, just go check out the video on mitosis that I made, or cell division. Now, so basically it splits into two identical cells. Now they're still spermatogonium, right? Because they're still the exact same as this cell. Now these cells can do one of two things. They can either, for example, it can either decide to duplicate again and form more spermatogonium, or it can decide to enter meiosis. Meiosis. Remember meiosis and mitosis? Now, if this cell decides to enter meiosis instead of continuing to duplicate, it's called a primary spermatocyte. So, this cell right here would be called a primary spermatocyte because it is going to undergo meiosis. Okay? So, when it undergoes meiosis 1, and again, if you don't remember what meiosis is, I really urge you to go check out those videos. So when it undergoes meiosis 1, it's going to form two cells. These cells are called secondary spermatocytes. Secondary, right? Secondary. And now these secondary spermatocytes, ignore these two N and N that I'm putting here. This just means that this cell has diploid nucleus, and this N means it has a haploid nucleus. I'm going to talk about that at the end of this video, so ignore that for now. But you would understand what that means if you've watched meiosis. So now we have this secondary spermatocyte. Now we know meiosis doesn't stop after meiosis 1, so these will continue. They'll duplicate one more time in meiosis 2. So they will form two more. So that's called meiosis 2. Now what do we call these cells? We call these spermatids. 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 Now you'll probably ask me, okay, but these don't look like sperm. You're damn right they don't, because they're not done yet. After we form spermatids, these are gonna kind of grow up and change the way their body is. It's like when you grow up. You don't look the same from a baby. You might get bigger. Your head will get smaller relative to your body, right? You'll change shape. The same way the sperm will change shape. They will go from being spermatids, which are like normal round cells, into these proper real sperms, mature sperms that are able to actually fertilize an egg. We call these spermatozoa. So these ones right here is probably the ones you've been thinking of all along. We call these spermatozoa. So notice now, one more time, sperm is a general term, right? Look at all these different kinds. These are all sperm, but they're all given a different name depending what stage of the sperm life cycle we're in. But these final ones are called spermatozoa. They have a tail and are able to swim. But they're not that good at swimming yet. They're not that good. They're okay. It's like a baby that can kind of run, but kind of lanky, kind of wobbly, right? So these, after they're made in these seminiferous tubules, okay, so remember they're made in one of these tubules in the testes. After they're made, these spermatozoa, they will then be sent throughout these tubules, wiggle, 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 all the way up to here, the epididymis. When they reach the epididymis here they will stay for a while and become adults. They'll become really, really mature. They'll develop the ability to swim even better, so they can swim really, really fast and really, really strong. Okay, so that is important. Otherwise, when the male and the female when the sperm goes into the female, it won't be able to swim so fast, and so you'll never be able to fertilize. Okay, so that's important, this epididymis stage. Basically the place where these spermatozoa can learn to swim even better. Okay, now does this whole process, this is basically spermatogenesis. That's it. But you need to know a few other things, because does this process just happen by magic? Like, if this is how it happened, why can't you make sperm when you're a baby? Why not? Like, why can't you make sperm when you're 1 year old? Because of hormones. Let me show you. Remember, we have a brain, right? Hopefully everyone has a brain. And in the brain, there's like this small little gland, a small part of your brain. It looks like balls, but it's not. It's called the pituitary gland. Now, the pituitary gland releases some hormones. Specifically, these hormones get released when you reach puberty. Okay, these hormones are FSH, called follicle stimulating hormone, and also another one called LH, luteinizing hormone. Okay, we're going to represent these with little molecules. So this yellow one here will be FSH, and this blue one here will be LH. Now, both of these are made when you reach puberty, right? As I just said, but they have a slightly different function each. Oh yeah, by the way, the Sertoli cells also have another name. I forgot. I just want to tell you before I forget again. They're also called nurse cells, like a nurse, because you'll see later they will help these cells develop. You'll see later when I talk about it. But they can be called nurse cells as well, or sustenacular cells. But the most common name is this one. Okay, now anyways, coming back to these hormones, you know when they're made in this pituitary gland, they will be sent. Let's start with LH. LH will be made here and it will be sent into the bloodstream, and it will travel through the bloodstream all the way here. So it's traveled now all the way to these seminiferous tubules. When they reach the seminiferous tubules, they'll kind of leave. Okay, they'll leave this vessel, and then they'll go to these Leydig cells. And I remember this well because L for Leydig. So the LH will go to Leydig cells. Okay, so it goes to these Leydig cells, and what it does is it's like a message telling these Leydig cells, okay, wake up, man, you got to start making testosterone. So it goes here, wakes up these Leydig cells, and these Leydig cells will start making another molecule called testosterone. You have probably heard of testosterone, right? Now, testosterone has many functions in the body, okay? Now, say this testosterone is made. We make a bunch. Now, testosterone will now leave these Leydig cells and go towards these tubules. But the problem is testosterone doesn't like water. It's a little bit afraid of water. Now, inside these tubules, inside these seminiferous tubules, there's water here. Look at all these blue. That's water. That's a fluid. So that means this testosterone is comfortable going to here, but right when it reaches here, it doesn't want to go inside the tubule. It's a little bit afraid of water. It is not soluble in water. It doesn't like to go in water. So that's a problem. So what happens next? So we'll come back to this. Another molecule, this FSH, is going to be released. And the same thing, it's going to go into the bloodstream, travel all the way to these seminiferous tubules. And once it gets here, it's going to leave. And then it's going to go, and instead of going to Leydig cells, it's going to go to FSH. It's going to go to Sertoli cells. I think of it like S, so Sertoli. So it's going to come to these friggin' Sertoli cells, okay? And it comes here and it tells these Sertoli cells to basically make a molecule that helps testosterone be able to enter this area. Because remember, testosterone is afraid of water. But when this FSH comes here and tells these Sertoli cells to make a molecule that can help testosterone enter here, then testosterone can enter. So now testosterone can enter. And testosterone is super important to tell all of these processes to happen. So testosterone will tell mitosis to happen. It will tell meiosis to happen. It will tell meiosis 2 to happen. Okay, so testosterone makes all of this happen. That's why you cannot make sperm when you're a baby, because your brain doesn't make FSH or LH yet, only when you reach puberty. Now, besides this, testosterone can also go into the bloodstream and travel around your body, right? And we know males and females are different, right? Males develop muscles when they reach puberty. Like they have a deep voice, they grow hair in different places. That's all because of testosterone. So testosterone not only helps to make sperm by stimulating all these processes, but it also helps to make your body grow and change to become a man, okay? So, actually, wait, I forgot. Remember these Sertoli cells, these big yellow cells. So far I didn't mention what they do. We only know that in between these Sertoli cells, this whole process of spermatogenesis happens. But also, Sertoli cells provide nutrients and energy and things like that for this whole process to happen. Each of these cells need energy to grow and divide and all that. And Sertoli cells are going to be like the mom. They're going to give them food and help them have all the nutrients they have for this process to finish. Okay, so Sertoli cells are also super important as nourishment cells. Okay, they help the development. Now I just want to think if I covered everything. I think I covered everything. This should be the entire process of spermatogenesis. Now, don't worry about the words, okay? Because I know I didn't write down any like sentences. Because right here, I have a little picture where you can see all of the words. So here you can read it carefully and make sure you understand all the processes and all the names. But that's it for spermatogenesis. Now, for those who don't like this idea, the diploid and haploid, let me explain what that means real quick. Okay, so when we start off, let's say we're looking at that cell. Normally, we have a lot of chromosomes, right? A lot of chromosomes. And each chromosome pair, we have one from our mom and one from our dad. So we're using one example here. Let's say the striped one is from your mom and the empty one is from your dad. So we call this diploid. When you have one from your mom and one from your dad, we call it 2n. You have two different copies, 2n. Now, when it duplicates before meiosis, you still have two copies. You still have one variation from your mom, or you have a variation from your mom and a variation from your dad. So you have a diploid still. But when we undergo meiosis, what happens is one will go to one cell and the other will go to another cell. Now, this cell only has one version. It only has the mom's version or the dad's version. And this one only has the mom's version or the dad's version. So we call that haploid, or N. Now, finally, during meiosis 2, we will form 4 cells. This one will split into 2, and this one will split into 2. Now, still, this one only has one version, this one only has one version, this one only one version, and so on. So we still call them haploid. So that's pretty much what I meant by a spermatocyte being diploid and a primary spermatocyte being diploid and a secondary spermatocyte being haploid and a spermatotid being haploid. So I hope this makes a bit more sense, because when you write your final answer, you should mention that these are diploid and these are haploid. Okay, I'm going to show you now a final exam question. So here is a question basically asking you to describe how sperm are made. And then here's the mark scheme, so you can read it, and they kind of expect you to know the word diploid and haploid and stuff. Now, this one is only 4 marks, so don't expect to only prepare this stuff. If you can explain it the way I did here, even if you get a 7 or 8 mark question, you should be able to get full marks, okay? Because some questions are a bit shorter, like 4 marks, and sometimes they can be 8 marks. Now, that's it for this video on spermatogenesis. This is how sperm is made, okay? In the next video, I'll explain the oogenesis, and I'll also make a video on the male reproductive system structure, everything, because you need to be able to draw it.